What's up, my lovely curiosities? It's Chris from Tabletops and Tentacles. A note about this video: it was filmed back in November or December of 2019, before the world had an apocalypse, and this Kickstarter was originally designed for a March release. There are a few things I had to cut because of inaccurate information at this point now, but I still think it's a pretty solid video. More importantly, Mantis Falls is an awesome game. You should definitely go to Kickstarter and check it out. It's live right now on Kickstarter, and it's a super fun little two-player noir game with a little bit of a hidden traitor element. Check it out. This is before my new microphone, my new camera. So it's not my finest video, but it is a great game. So enjoy it, even if you don't like the video. Thanks. What's cracking, everyone? It's Chris from Tabletops and Tentacles, here with a Kickstarter preview for Mantis Falls, a game of trust. Just a word of warning ahead of time: this is a prototype game, so some items may not be finished or in prototype form. They may change when they come to Kickstarter or after the project has completed and hopefully funded. Also, any opinions stated during this video are my own and do not reflect the game maker or anybody else. But because this is a preview, I'm going to try and keep my comments and opinions to the minimal on this, because I really want people watching a preview video to get an idea of what the game is, not what I think about the game. In Mantis Falls, you're in a mob-ruled town in the 1940s. You play a witness that has seen something you shouldn't have, and you are trying to make it through the night to the end of the road where a ride waits to take you to safety. The thing about this game here, Mantis Falls, everything isn't exactly as it seems, and sometimes a witness is secretly an assassin sent to kill you before you escape. It's something that you keep hidden during the game. Your role is always a secret right up until the end. You don't know if the person you're traveling with is a fellow witness or someone pretending to be a witness that's been sent to kill you. I really like that aspect of it. I know I said I wasn't going to bring my opinion in, but it's kind of adds some fun to it. So I'm not much of a rules guy as far as teaching how to play, but I do want to give you a good overview of the game and how it works. In the game, you play a witness, and you start at the Sunset Diner and Grill right around sunset. Sun's going down. You know that you have to make it through the night to escape and become a witness against this crime, as opposed to a corpse laying on a ditch somewhere. You have some tools and some events and some actions to help you do this. Each player starts with a character card. In the base game, you're both just urbanized, just standard people. You all have 8 hit points, and the character cards tell you how many hit points you have, and some of them have special talents. Primarily in the expansion packs, they give you other roles, different life points, that kind of thing. The life track is an interesting track, speaking of life. You have a certain number of wounds, and then you have a last gasp. And what happens with that is when you hit that 8 point or 7 or whatever your life is, you have one last gasp to try and heal yourself before you die. And it's kind of a cool technique on that, because you hit that point and you're like, okay, I know I have something in my hand that will help me heal and give me one last chance to keep going. You get to do that 3 times. If you manage to heal yourself and continue going 3 times, but still get killed, you die. The only way to win the game, if you're a witness, is to get to the end of the road at the end of the night and escape into the dark. Typically, if you're playing a game with 2 witnesses, the plan is for both of you to get to safety. However, if there's an assassin in the group, their goal is to kill you before you reach the end of the road. The interesting thing about this is you don't know that he's the assassin, and the other way you can win is by killing the assassin. But if they're playing their role the way an assassin's supposed to, you don't know you're supposed to be killing him. So this really does play out as a co-op game with just a little bit of a twisty, backstabbing assassination attempt in there, which I think is really cool. It's a nice technique with this. And the thing that really plays into that is these event cards here. There are different types of events in this event deck, including scene incidents, which when you lay out, everybody sees it. There are unseen oppositions and incidences and unseen incidents. The difference with those is that in the case of unseen opposition or incidences, when those happen, you don't show that card to your teammate / opponent. So there's a chance, some of these, they do something like distribute 2 wounds between you at your discretion. So when it's a scene incident, you can make team choices and say, okay, I feel like both of us should take a hit because we're both even on the life track, that kind of thing. But you can make the choice, both as an assassin or as a witness, with unseen incidences to distribute that life hit to your opposition. I really like the way the event cards play out. There's a huge variety of them. It's a really nice sized deck. And there's a lot of different, very thematic stuff in here. There's bad guys, there's guards that are you're caught off guard. There's not a lot of flavor text to it, so a lot of it is inferred in the card, but the simplicity in it really plays into this game well. I really enjoyed the aspect of the event cards in particular when we were playing this. The opposition are basically your foes in it. So they have a health, then they have a not defeated and a defeated stat. And that stat you have the 1 turn to do. So that's kind of a tricky thing because if you don't beat them, then you must do the defeated thing. It's not something that carries forward into the next turn. Their health is variable. Some of them just have 4 health. Some of them, it is based off of where you are on the road. Each of the road cards has a different stat up here in the corner in the traffic light, as well as a few little status effects that are roll into play with the rest of these. Like this one, for instance, has an ambush location and a bus stop. And depending on the event and action cards you're using, it plays into that. Like there's bus tickets where you can take a bus from one location to the next. In the example of this particular opposition, their health is any number between 1 and 4, your choice. Now, because this is an unseen opposition, that means you get to pick whether or not you beat them, or maybe you do some damage. So it's a really neat little aspect to it. I like the unseen versus seen, and it plays into things in a really interesting fashion. Gameplay in Mantis Falls, because it's just a 2-player game, stays pretty steady, but there's a lot to do in your turn. The nice thing about this is it mitigates a little bit of that player downtime during that, because not only are you doing things during your turn, but your co-player is also doing stuff during that turn. So you start out with phase 1, which is initial movement, and essentially that is just you moving along the road, or using conserved energy up at the top, which is something we'll get into later, to give you extra movement on it. Part 2, you draw an event. This event, depending on whether it's seen or unseen, is either played out so people can see what the event is going to be, or kept a secret on your end there. Then we go into the main play. And this is kind of an interesting thing because depending on what this event is, if it's a scene event, you both know what you're up against, you both know what the consequences are of your actions. However, if it is an unseen event, then that opposition or incident becomes a secret, and you as the player makes your choice about how much to tell about it. Now you can't lie, you need to be honest about what the result is to an extent, but you at least need to be clear as to what your theoretical goal is during the action phase of the main play here. So you can choose one thing to do during main play. You can action play, which lets you place any number of action cards from your action card deck out into play for that turn. Now this is an interesting little hand here because you have 7 cards in your hand, and they have suits at the top, sort of like a standard deck of cards, but they're unique ones. You got Royal, Lilac, Amber, Hunter, and they're sort of themed for what it is, but there is some overlap amongst the cards. The important part about it is you can play as many cards as you want, and all of the effects take place, but you can only play from the same suit to do that. So in this case, I've got these 2 Lilac suits, and I could play both of these if I want. Now you do place these face down. You also place them face down in the order in which you want them to activate. So your opponent / co-player will be doing the same during this, and they'll pick a couple of cards to lay down in their action sequence as well. You can play just one. You don't have to play any if you're the other player, if you don't want to, or if you don't have anything that would be helpful. And then you take turns revealing the action. So I would reveal this that says move forward 2 roads. And then they would reveal theirs, which is a night owl, which gives, it has a special effect to it. But then you reveal your next one, and then they reveal theirs. Depending on what this card is on the event, that is the processing mode after showing the cards, and everything happens. If we dealt enough damage to defeat this opposition, then he's defeated, and we follow that rule on here. Other things you can do during your turn. You can also conserve energy, and instead of playing cards like this, like maybe this is an event that there's nothing we can do about anyway, you can take any card from your hand and place it in the conserved energy section up at the top here. What those do is the actions are essentially wasted. You'll never get those back. You'll never use those. But what that energy does is it lets you move further down the road on your next turn or on your co-player's next turn. You can also discard up to 2 action cards from your hand, or you can do nothing. If you're in a position where nothing you would do would help, or perhaps it's a little more strategic to stay where you are. So after your main play step is done, if you did play action cards down in that phase, you will process those by revealing them, doing what it says on them. Some of them do say sometimes. Some of them have lasting conditions that will go further out in the game depending on how you play it. There's a lot going on. As you can see, the action card stack is fairly tall. We've played this game a few times now, and there are still cards coming up each time that I'm like, oh, this is cool, I've never seen it before. Phase 5 is event processing. After you've processed all of the actions on your cards, you move on to that event card that's sitting there lurking in the corner. If it's an opposition card, it's an easy fix. You either defeated the guy and you follow the defeated section, or you didn't defeat them and you suffer the consequences. If it's an incident, they have a little more depth and complexity to them in a lot of ways. Like this scene incident says priorities. You receive 2 wounds. Not so much depth and complexity there. But there's a bonus on there, and the other player must show you 3 of their action cards. Now, that's an interesting one because it's something that plays into that hidden role a little bit, and you might get some insight into whether or not they really are who they seem to be. And at the same time, it also kind of helps you plan out a little bit, because otherwise you're not really supposed to be discussing what's in your hand too much. There's unseen incidences as well, which I believe are all in this pile. And in the respect to that one, sometimes those ones are a little trickier to decide how you want to use them. For instance, this one, it says both players receive wounds equal to your yellow number, which would play into that traffic light you're on. But there's some of them that say a player receives that wound. So it's kind of an interesting use of the secret events. It gives you a little bit of control over how things happen. Once you've finished round 5, we go into 6, which is draw, where you just replenish your hand up to 7 from the action card deck. And then you go on to player 2's turn. Now, one thing that player 2 gets as a bonus, because they are going second and it's just the give and take of a 2-player game, they get an ally card. And this is something I haven't discussed yet. These are fun. I really like the ally cards. So there's 5, 6 different ones here, I believe. And they each have different names and things that they do to help you. And the cool thing about this is it's sort of a set collecting aspect of it. You can get allies through other cards in the game, and you have to have a certain number of them in order to use that ally. But once you do, they stay active during the remainder of the game. That ally is very valuable to you. However, they're not always going to last the whole game. Ms. Rocco is a woman with a gun, and on her turns you deal up to 1 wound to either the other player or the event opposition. So that's kind of an interesting thing. There's a lot of cards in here that allow you to do damage to your opponent / fellow witness, and it's kind of it's a tricky line to play, whether you want to pretend like, oh, maybe you are the assassin, or not, and just kind of turn it into a gameplay thing where you're like, okay, so if you're cool with it, I'm going to give you this damage because I can't afford to lose more, that kind of thing. It's kind of a fun challenge with that, and it really depends heavily on your other player's mode of play. My brother likes to play the jerk when he's playing a game like this, and it was very different playing with him, where he likes to pretend like maybe he's the assassin even when he isn't throughout the game. One of the games we played, I was the assassin. I knew I was the assassin, and he tried to play like he was the assassin the entire game, and it was fun. It was like one of those spy movies where you secretly know what they're doing isn't what they're doing, but you let them play it out because it's a little more fun to kill them right here. But anyway, I said I wasn't going to let my opinion of this game sneak in too much, and I'm not doing a real great job with that, because I actually really enjoyed Mantis Falls. I'm a huge noir fan. I love detective movies. I love detective novels, and this game captures some of that. I think the board, it's simple, but it really does get that look of being on a road at night. And as you reveal these cards, it just gives it this really cool vibe to it. You travel along the map this way like a snake to the very end of the road, and you reveal the cards as you reach them. There's a few things like the road closed card that if you land there, you have to go back. You have to find a way to make it past the broken road. And that's where these conserved energy cards come into play. It lets you give an extra action so that you can make it past that closed road. Fun little tweaks like that make this game, which looks fairly simple, it's just a few cards and a couple of decks, into a nice little complex game that's really easy to lay out. It's fun to play. There's not a lot of really solid 2-player games out there, and my wife and I look for them actively, and this is one that I think really fits the bill, particularly if you like hidden roles or if you like the theme of noir and detective aspect to it. Essentially, that's the game. You start at the beginning at the Sunset Diner and Grill. You work your way through the night along the road, trying to defeat opposition, trying to overcome weird incidences in the night, and trying to make sure that your fellow witness / assassin doesn't kill you in the darkness. It's pretty solid. I really enjoyed Mantis Falls. I think that the graphic design is really appropriate for the era that it's representing, that 1940s noir, small town on the road, Twin Peaksian kind of weirdness going on. It's got some nice art. It's fairly simple. The design is clean, but it's got that nice retro aesthetic to it. Mantis Falls is coming to Kickstarter this year from Distant Rabbit Games. I hope you enjoyed this preview, and if you did like it, hit the like button. Please subscribe to Tabletops and Tentacles here. Thanks again for watching. This is Chris from Tabletops and Tentacles. May you live in interesting times.